Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Blue Raider Podcast, hosted by Jake Bolden and presented by the Conseco Group General Contracting and Mighty Dog Roofing. Don't miss another Tuesday episode by subscribing to the podcast on all streaming platforms or catch our visual presentation uploaded every week on YouTube. Don't miss our next ticket giveaways by subscribing and following on all Blue Raider Podcast social media accounts on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Blue Raider Pod. Welcome back to another episode of the Blue Raider Podcast. I'm your host, Jake Bolden. In today's episode, it is time to start turning our page and our attention to the basketball scene. Football is coming off of their second win in 3 games, and so we'll talk plenty about that, as well as the upcoming basketball season with our ESPN Plus play-by-play broadcaster, Jake Rose. Make sure you stick around through the middle of the episode where we'll have our exclusive player interview with De'Arre McDonald, local Murfreesboro standout cornerback for the football team. And then, as always, we will wrap up with a Behind Enemy Lines segment with our friends over at Fan the Flames football podcast from Lynchburg, covering the Liberty Flames, Ben Reynolds. So we've got so much to get to in today's episode, but before we do so, I want to take just a second to thank our sponsors of today's episode, beginning with the Conseco Group. Since 1987, the Conseco Group has been turning dreams into reality. Whether it's pre-construction consulting, construction management, design, build, or renovations and improvements, we're here to exceed your expectations. At Conseco Group, we don't just deliver, we deliver with passion, precision, and unparalleled quality. Our hands-on approach ensures your investment is maximized and your vision is brought to life. From Clarksville all the way down to Columbia and beyond, trust Conseco Group to handle every detail with expertise and care. Ready to build your future? Contact the Conseco Group today at 615-298-9907 or visit their website at theconsecogroup.com. As well as thanks to our sponsor at Mighty Dog Roofing. When it comes to your home, trust Mighty Dog Roofing Nashville East for all your needs. As a veteran and locally owned business, we're honored to be one of just 11 Owens Corning contractors nationwide to win their prestigious service award. From roofing and gutters to windows and siding, our expert team delivers top quality craftsmanship and unmatched service. We're here to protect your home with pride and precision. Choose Mighty Dog Roofing Nashville East, where excellence is a tradition. Call us today at 615-MD-ROOFS, that's ROOFS, or visit their website at mightydog.roofing.com to schedule that free quote today. Now, it is time to get into our first interview of today's episode. Joining us from, as I said at the top, from ESPN play-by-play broadcaster for the Blue Raiders on both football, a little less football this year, but we look forward to him calling the games this upcoming basketball season. It is Jake Rose. Jake, how's it going?
Doing all right, Jake. Thanks for having me on again, man. I'm always excited to be on the Blue Raider pod and get ready to talk a little hoops with basketball knocking on the door tomorrow morning for Education Day. So thanks for having me, dude.
Absolutely. Yeah. Jake is returning. He was here in the infant stages. And of course, I appreciate you doing that then and now, again, kind of getting more into your expertise, digging into what's to come with basketball season. But before we do so, I do want to take just a little bit to celebrate the win this last weekend with the football team over El Paso, winning their second of their last 3 games. The bowl game dream is still alive in Murfreesboro. They got to win out from here. But Jake, I just kind of want to turn it over to you a little bit about, the expectations moving forward. I know the Liberty game is kind of high hopes right now, but do you think that the playoff, or I said the playoff, that would be a far-fetched dream, but is the bowl dream still alive?
One day. Yeah, absolutely. You look at what, Liberty's kind of fallen off a cliff the last couple of weeks. Losing to Kennesaw State 2 weeks ago was the shock of the year so far. And then with games against New Mexico State and FIU coming up to finish up the season, they absolutely can. And honestly, they're one of the only teams in the conference to actually win a road conference game. There's 6 teams, I think, that have not won a road game at all this year. And for Middle to get their road win all the way in UTEP, which is, that is one heck of a road trip for a Conference USA team to get that win on the road. I honestly think that says quite a bit about the toughness of this squad.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that's another part of this win that gets removed from the level of adversity that it takes to get a win like that. So yeah, absolutely. And you got the opportunity to kind of get things, you right the ship a little bit this week. And I think, and I spoke with Ben Reynolds about this with Fan the Flames podcast, which again, stick around to the end of this episode for that interview. But you have this opportunity where you get a win, this Saturday, a lot of those that doubted Mason and doubted this program in general, you have an opportunity to really win some of those people that might have been early on
Yeah.
naysayers with a win this Saturday, because albeit Liberty is on a losing streak, they're not the team that we all necessarily thought they were, but beating a team like Liberty would still, again, win back some of those fans. So when you look to this game this upcoming Saturday, Jake, I want to hear from you as someone that, again, has been there in some of the successes. And then, of course, when the team has really faltered early on this year, what needs to be corrected for this team to be successful this Saturday?
Ooh. Well, I think you had kind of alluded to it a little bit, that the defense the last few weeks, outside of the Jacksonville State game, kind of got away from them a little bit there in the fourth quarter, but the defense has really made some big strides in the last 3 weeks. And Liberty, is known for their high scoring offense, but they've been struggling offensively the last few weeks as well. But defensively, Liberty has been giving up a ton of points and a ton of yards. And so I honestly think that this Saturday is a good chance for Middle Tennessee's offense to really finally open up a little bit. I know Holden Willis didn't really play this past weekend against UTEP, and him, hopefully he's back in the lineup this Saturday. But rule number one, you got to find a way to get Omari Kelly the ball. The fact that they won that game on the road against UTEP with him only getting 2 touches was a little surprising, especially since they only ran the ball for 94 yards, 90 yards. So I think going into this weekend against Liberty, you're looking for, one, don't turn the ball over. I know Nick had a couple interceptions, and then Middle's had a tough time hanging on to the football. 8 fumbles so far this year. So you're looking for a clean game in terms of hanging on to the football and not turning the ball over, and you got to convert on third down. They've got to get way better on third down than what they were this past weekend and what they've been all season. But I think it can be done. I think the last couple of weeks, when you look at Liberty defensively, they've been really struggling on third down, especially. So, and they've been giving up chunk plays. I mean, just massive chunk plays. They gave up chunk plays to Kennesaw State, who could hardly move the ball against Middle a couple weeks ago. So I definitely think the opportunity is there to get the win on Saturday.
Yeah, as you said, the margin of error is very slim in games like this. You talk about the turnovers, that's definitely one. I look back to the Kennesaw State game where you've got the illegal procedure penalties on things as simple as special teams. Like you can't give 5 free yards to any team, but especially a team like Liberty, who, again, they're just as hungry for a win as much as we are. I would say we probably have more at play than Liberty does, but even that fan base is probably a lot more passionate about just winning a game at this point because of how far their season's fallen off. And again, it hasn't fallen on them yet, but they've got Sam Houston and Western Kentucky to end the year. So their ability to get back into the conference championship conversation is at hand, and they can't look past MTSU in that regard. So they've got to win this game, especially just even be in the conversation still late in the year. But yeah, I agree totally with everything there. I think the third down defense. The other thing too is Jaquil Meadowbrooks looked great this Saturday. He had a few chunk plays there late, especially on that game-winning drive. I know that the broadcast booth, and I'm not sure who was on the call for color, but he made a great point. When you make the chunk plays, it doesn't mean you need to be married to the run game. It doesn't mean we need to keep trying to shove it down their throat, because at some point UTEP would load the box and then we couldn't get the yards that we needed. We were getting 2-3 yards after the big chunk play. It's okay to mix in the play action. I like to see the offense kind of bring that versatility and that more prolific style that we're used to with play action and the pistol. And we know that Nick can do it really well. And as you already touched on, Omari Kelly, give him the touches. Miles Butler looked great this weekend too. So finding a way to distribute the ball to all these playmakers is going to be quintessential to them having any success this Saturday. And again, I can't stress it enough, as you well put it. It's the margin of error. You got to play a really good, clean game just to stay in it. But yeah, I'm excited to see what this team does. Again, this could be a turning point for them. But I want to use that opportunity now let's switch our attention over to basketball. Talk about a turning point. The men's basketball team. I've talked about it till I'm blue in the face. I think this is probably the 4th or 5th week in a row I've brought up men's basketball, and I've said all that I can possibly say about this team. But Jake, I want to hear from someone like yourself who has seen a lot of Nick McDevitt basketball over the last couple of years. What are you hoping to see with this group? Because I know a lot of people, and rightfully so, are wanting to see this program get back to where they were just 2 years ago when they were East Division champions.
Yeah, I think that this program has pretty high expectations this year because they've got a lot of returning firepower. Just between Justin Porter and Cam Weston coming back, although he is coming back from that torn ACL, but he's almost back to 100% from what I've heard from the coaching staff. And he's ready to play, just kind of missing a little bit of that pop, a little bit of that experience. And some of that's kind of a mental thing, I think, when you come off of a big knee injury like that. But then a lot of the new guys that they have coming in, they've got some guys that can really shoot the ball really, really well, like Jalen Counter that's coming in, Alec Oglesby, that also has transferred in. I'm not sure if those guys are going to play tomorrow, but the thing that I think excites me when I talk to the coaching staff about this men's squad this year is the depth. They think that they have the team that they can roll out 10 guys. When it comes to January, February basketball, when most programs and coaches are really shortening that bench and only running 7-8 players in and out, they think that they've got enough talent to where they can be running 10 guys out there in February and March. And that's a big deal in college basketball. And they think they've got some really great point guard play coming back this year with Cam, and then also Justin, who had to move to that point guard role last year after Cam got hurt. But I'm very excited for this men's season this year because I think anybody that watched the men's team last year would probably tell you that shot selection might not have been the greatest thing in the world. But this year, the coaching staff thinks that they've got the guys that have the experience coming in from other Division I programs, whether it's Arizona State, Louisville, College of Charleston, IUPUI, that can come in right away and play significant minutes and be significant contributors.
And if I can build off of that just a little bit, you talk about Cam Weston coming back, and then to tie into the depth there, something that this team desperately needed last year when Cam went out was a true point guard backup directly behind him. And as you said, Justin had to move over into the point guard role, had to basically learn that whole new position because regardless of what most people think, there's a significant difference between the play style that Cam Weston provides at point guard versus someone like Justin Porter, who was brought in to be a scorer, and now he has to be a facilitator at the same time. And granted, he had his games, he scored his 40 points, but in general, that's not a position that Justin's very comfortable with. But I do think on the backside of this now, he's a more well-rounded ball player because of that year of experience he's had to play in that role. But to go back to this upcoming year, you get Cam back. You already touched on Jalen Counter, which my understanding with Counter is a little bit of load management for him, which is kind of odd that we're using that terminology in college basketball. But he's getting a little bit of load management early on in the season. So the point guard position, I feel like very comfortable with. Down low, some other guys like Kamari Lands, the Arizona State transfer, and Louisville transfer as well. And then Isam Mustafa. Those guys are going to be big key role players. And then I hear great things from the camp about Chris Loof and his development, where he is, because I think when I look back at tape of last year and see him, the one thing that's always missing is, again, that offensive physicality that we're always begging for down low. And again, granted, to Nick McDevitt's style, he's never been the one to have a banger down low. Now, DeAndre Dishman, certainly, but he would go to the top of the key. He would facilitate the basketball. Loof, that's not really his bread and butter, at least not what I've seen. And maybe when they say he's developed a lot this offseason, maybe that's what they're saying is he's becoming more comfortable with the ball in his hands. He's able to put the ball on the floor. So, but that front court, I think that even with Jared Coleman-Jones transferring out, I think the front court got better. Again, and pivotal is the amount of depth that they provided down there.
I know they're very excited about the addition of Kamari Lands, who transfers in from Arizona State. He's very long. He's very athletic. Still trying to find his niche a little bit at the college level. And, he's was one of I think he was like a top 100 prospect coming out of high school. Goes to all these other big programs, doesn't quite fit in, doesn't quite kind of get the time that he was hoping for. Comes to Middle Tennessee because he wants to be a contributor. And Middle Tennessee was looking for guys that needed to be contributors immediately. And they feel like that Kamari can be one of those guys that can also really spread the floor because he is so athletic. But in talking to Nick earlier this week, he was very, very excited about the progression of Chris Loof. I think last year, the impressive thing about Loof was that he was a 19-year-old freshman, 6'11", and although you're right, he was not the most physical of post players, he still knew how to use his body. He still could move his feet really well for a younger big guy. He wasn't kind of dangling around on the court or anything like that. Like, he knew how to move. He was light on his feet, but he's really worked on his jump shot this offseason. They think that he could be very, very integral to their offense. because they're going to be running a lot of 5 out this year. Kind of how the NBA has kind of gone to a more positionless basketball, where you'll have a post player and maybe not a traditional back to your back or back to the bucket center. But they really think that Chris can be a threat out on the perimeter, but he's added some strength. He's added some weight. So they're going to need him on the block, and they're going to need him getting some offensive rebounds too, as well as knocking down shots on the perimeter. But they do think that this is a front court that can be pretty formidable.
Another guy I'm excited about is Torrey Alston. Sat the bench last year with a red shirt. I know Nick was very high on him. I know they had their secret scrimmages, and I heard good things about Torrey Alston and his development this offseason. So really get to see him into action. And again, this Monday night's game, I know we're talking now before that game is played. This will come out Tuesday morning. But when we talk about this exhibition game, and you hope to see all these players that we're mentioning get quality minutes, in a game like this, it doesn't necessarily mean anything, but I always want to say this because these games don't mean nothing. There is some value in these games, despite what people like to say about them. And if I can, this little factoid: Kermit Davis, the year prior to the NCAA tournament run, lost one of these games to Martin Methodist. I don't. Again, as much as people like to say these don't mean anything, they certainly do. And I don't think that Oglethorpe is coming in here just to be steamrolled either. I'm sure that they want to get quality minutes in themselves. Yeah. So I say all this to finally get back to the question, back to you, Mr. Rose, is what do you think? What do you want this team to do well Monday? What are things that they need to do well to make you feel better about this team? And then secondly, when they carry this momentum over into their first real Division I game against Abilene Christian, what are we hoping to see on their development as far as road games go?
That's a good question because, the last couple of years, everybody in Conference USA has really struggled on the road in conference play. So if you can even go 500 on the road in Conference USA play, you've got a pretty good shot of winning the whole conference in the regular season. So that's actually a really, really good point that you bring up. And I think that's exactly why Nick and his staff went out and got guys that had Division I experience in the transfer portal, because they wanted guys that had that experience, that knew what it was like to play in a really tough conference schedule and know what it's like to go on the road and win games. So I think that's why they went out and got those guys. In terms of what I'm looking for on Monday, it's to see where the new guys fit in. I know there's going to be a couple, as we mentioned earlier, that probably will not play, but also to see the pace of this offense. That's always kind of been a staple of Nick McDevitt, is a high-paced offense and defense starting that offense in transition, getting a turnover, going the other way. Obviously, injuries last year kind of prohibited that quite a bit. So this year I want to see what it really looks like with that deep 8, 9, 10 guy rotation. And we'll certainly see that tomorrow against Oglethorpe, and probably in the first really month of the season, as guys start to kind of figure out their roles in this offense. And if you're going to play for Nick McDevitt, you got to play defense too. So we know that Justin Porter can play defense on the perimeter. Cam, obviously coming off the knee injury, is still a little bit of a question mark defensively, but what kind of steps did Chris Loof take defensively on the block? How does Kamari Lands defend a post guy in the paint and on the block? And what's the communication like? Who's going to be the anchor of the defense? Who's going to be calling the shots on the defensive end? Last year, it was Jared Coleman-Jones a lot of times, and then it was Elias King from the wing. So how do guys step up in those roles? How do those roles flesh themselves out early in the season? Because one thing that I think goes overlooked with basketball in terms of the composition of basketball teams is chemistry matters. If you don't have guys that communicate, if you don't have guys that get along, you're not going to win a damn thing. So you guys, I want to see how this team actually gels at the early part of this season. And we're talking to the coaching staff. They're excited because a lot of these guys, are new, but they've gotten along really well, and practices have been intense. They've been open competitions. But from what we've heard, that these guys really like each other and they're ready to compete.
Right. And one thing I noticed too at practice when I went a few weeks ago is about this roster, and you talk about the chemistry level and the amount of talent that's in the locker room in general, that no starting position, in my opinion, is necessarily very safe. I think the only real lock when completely healthy is Cam Weston at point guard and Justin Porter at the number 2. I think 3, 4, or 5. The level of competition that these guys bring at practice is. I mean, they're fighting for a starting spot every single week, which I think is a good level, healthy amount of competition in practice every week. So let's turn our attention over to Lady Raiders. What a season it was last year, undefeated in Conference USA, only the second time in Conference USA history. Our best friend of the show, Rick Insell, was robbed of his Coach of the Year honors, but it doesn't seem to faze him. This team looks poised to do it again. We've got 2 exhibition matches. We've got to see this team play, and really the starting 5 doesn't look like it's missed much of a beat.
No, honestly, I think this team has a chance to be better than last year's team. I think when you look at their schedule every year, Middle Tennessee in November and December, they're always scheduling really tough non-conference games, and it's the same thing again this year. Princeton, Grand Canyon, and teams like that, the teams that have gone to the tournament in the last couple of years. And in talking to Matt Insell, he said, "Hey, it might take a few weeks, a month and a half, for this team to really, really coalesce around each other, just because there are a lot of new faces." And he's not so much worried about the starting 5 at all. I don't think when you look at the names, especially with Courtney Blakely coming back, Boldareva, Jalen Gregory coming back, Tamia Scott taking another step in the right direction after a breakout sophomore year. You look at that starting 5, and you can make an argument that all 5 of those starters are, preseason Conference USA first-team players. But the big question about this team is they've got a lot of depth. And what are those roles going to look like coming off the bench? And then, bringing in Arike from Texas Tech, she's got a chance to have a big, big season as well.
You bring up the depth there, and on the boards over at Go Middle nonstop this last week is they were all anticipating they'd play 9-10 girls, and to your point, they are very deep. It's one of the deeper teams we've ever seen under Insell in quite some time. But in the second exhibition, majority of the minutes went to about 7 or 8 girls. I think we're going to see him revert back to his old ways, but for whatever reason, the knock is always that doesn't stand up well when you play up against big teams. Well, we've seen that disproven time and time again with defeating Louisville, with beating a good Tennessee team last year. Played a good half against LSU. I don't want to get too deep into the weeds there, but this team, obviously, that recipe still works. So again, I'm obviously on the side of it. Doesn't matter if only 5 play the whole game. If you're winning basketball games and they're competitive, it doesn't matter.
Sure.
But what are your thoughts on as far as the depth of this team, and should we be concerned when we play these bigger competition that they're only playing 7 or 8 girls?
I don't know if it's so much concern. You mentioned those big wins, against Louisville last year or 2 years ago, I guess now, which is weird to think about. And Tennessee last year, and all those games, Middle shot the ball really well from outside the perimeter. So that definitely helps when you're shooting, 45, 50% from behind the arc. But I do think that the depth of this team will be a strength to the fact that they think that they can get to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament this year. You go back to the LSU game. LSU just went LSU in that second half. Nothing you can do about that. But you look at Louisville. Even last year, it good shooting is something that Rick Insell has always had in his tenure as the head coach of the women's program, and that can cover up for a lot of things. Now this year, they've got that added weapon of extra depth and experience coming back this year. That I don't think that there's any reason why they can't win the conference tournament and regular season championship again and make it to the second round of the NCAA tournament. So I do think I understand what you're saying about only playing 7, 8 girls for the exhibition game. Yeah, I mean, it's probably still going to be a little bit more top heavy in terms of minutes, but those 9 and 10 spots, or at least that 8, 9 spot, there's still at least going to be 5, 6, 7 minutes that are going to be available tonight. That could be a really big deal as minutes really add up down the road, especially with Boldareva, who's really kind of their only true post player. Arike, she can do a little bit of everything. She can be on the block. She can hit a mid-range jumper. She can step outside. But in terms of just the wear and tear of the season, I really think the depth of this Middle Tennessee team can take them a really, really long way.
I think one thing too that obviously the general public wouldn't be exposed to this because it was an exhibition game, but in the post game press conference with Insel, he did say that they still need to kind of solidify a number 4 behind Enrique. They haven't quite found the perfect fit there. We know Jada Granum's there, but again, admittedly, the offense falls off with Jada in the game. She's a great rebounder, she's a good defender, but you don't have the scoring threat that you have with Enrique. I threw the name Emily Monson in the hat, the Purdue transfer from Blackman High School, as someone who it has the length to play the 4. But I think one thing that is concerning, and at least from hearing Insel in both the exhibitions, is that defensive intensity for a lot of these new players, because he coaches that's where the strength lies in this team, is their defensive intensity, their attention to detail on the defensive side of things, and he wants that from all these new players, and it takes time to learn that philosophy and understanding to earn that spot. But Enrique is on a bit of a pitch count this year when it comes to minutes played. So they've got to solidify that 4 spot for them. So again, just from that alone, you're going to have some players rotate through there. They're going to play with some combinations, especially with the Northern Kentucky game. Again, this will come out the morning after the Northern Kentucky game, so we'll have a little bit more on the Blue Raider wrap-up portion at the end of this episode, so tune in there. But they go to Grand Canyon, or Grand Canyon comes to us, rather. They get an opportunity to rematch one of their losses last year, which, albeit wasn't a bad loss. They're a top 100 RPI team, an NCAA tournament team, potentially out of the WAC this year. Very good Grand Canyon team. I turn that same question I asked you about the men. What are you wanting to see this first week from the ladies, and then really more importantly, that third game, which is next Tuesday, where they have to go to Knoxville to face Tennessee? What should we expect to see out of this group to again kind of reconfirm our feelings that this is going to be a really good Lady Raiders basketball team?
Yeah, I'm actually really excited to see what Courtney Blakely does. From everything that I've heard and talking to the coaching staff, she stepped right back into the role and really kind of took over the offense and picked up where she left off, where she was developing, in her first couple of years here at Middle before she went to Arizona. But she's taken over and really kind of turned herself into a leader, and she's going to be the one running the show on the offense, the way that Savannah Wheeler did last year. So very interested to see Courtney back out on the court. From everything that I've heard, all things are good and everything's great, and she should be a great floor general. Tamia Scott and both Tamia Scott and Anastasia Boldareva took big steps last year. So I want to see what their development is. I think Tamia Scott has the chance to be Player of the Year in Conference USA. If she makes the jump like what she did from her freshman to sophomore year, she has all the potential in the world to be a superstar, and has the potential to absolutely get drafted. She's got the length to play the wing. She shoots really well. She's aggressive when she goes to the hole. So I think seeing her potential take another step in the right direction. And then obviously Anastasia took a big leap last year. So this in her senior year, I would love to see just where she's at as a post player. And what I really want to see from her is to take over ball games, because there isn't a single girl in Conference USA that can shut her down. And if she remembers that, I don't think there's anything stopping her.
Well said, Mr. Rose. I appreciate your time here and talking a little ball with us. We look forward to hearing you on the airwaves at ESPN Plus. Real quickly before we hang up, I want to can you give the people your social media where they can find you?
Yeah, I am on Twitter. It's not X, it's Twitter, at Jake Rose 24. And then I'm on Instagram at Jake on the mic. And that's where you can find me, and all my sports hot takes and little jokes, and self-deprecating humor and whatnot. So, but yeah, thanks a lot, Jake. I really appreciate you having me on. And I think it's going to be a great season for both the men's and women's teams.
Did you know the Blue Raider podcast has an online store? You can now support your favorite podcast by checking out our selection at our website, blueraiderpodcast.com. And stay tuned for new merchandise releases as we collaborate with athletes in NIL partnerships.
Joining the Blue Raider podcast now is senior cornerback from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. He's a graduate of Oakland High School. It is De'Arre McDonald. De'Arre, how's it going, man?
It's going good, real good.
De'Arre, I've got so much to cover with you, especially considering you're a local kid out of Murfreesboro. One of the more interesting things about you when you go back in your college history is one, like I said, you're from Oakland High School. You're a dual sport athlete there. You originally had committed to Cincinnati, but you came back home. First of all, what went into that decision a little bit about, when you decided to transfer back to Murfreesboro?
It was just, it was just coming back home. Like my mom, my brothers was here, so it really wasn't hard not to. It was just like I just thought it was probably my best decision and my best interest to come back home, and it so happened to work out.
One thing too is, like I said, you're a dual sport athlete, and you excelled pretty well at basketball, although football was always your sport. When you were making the decision, I know, because you can correct me if I'm wrong, did you ever have some offers to play basketball at college as well?
I believe I had like 3. I think it was Tech and TSU, but
Mm-hmm.
I was like from 2 or 3 basketball to 30 something in football. I just, it was one of them like do it smart.
Right. Well, did you ever have the opportunity to do both? And if you were given that opportunity, do you think that's something that you would have done?
When I came here, I thought about it, but like it really wasn't like a big thought. It was like, I could, but then I was like, I have no time to be an actual person, So it's always been a thought, but like, no, I don't think I could actually pull it off. That's crazy.
Right. Yeah. It always puts it in perspective how legends like Bo Jackson was able to play baseball and football and stuff like that. So, but I want to get back into the football side of things. Another, crossroads you came to in your career this year, going into this year, was Coach Mason. Stockstill, they parted ways, and then Mason gets hired, and you kind of have the opportunity once again to decide where does De'Arre want to go? Does he want to stay in Murfreesboro? Does he want to go somewhere else? But you opted to stay along with a few other seniors this year. What kind of went into that decision? Did you ever sit down with Coach Mason after he was hired? Was there ever that topic of discussion about, we need you to stay here?
It was just more of me and him talking. It was he believed I was one of them guys that he wanted to stay, that he wanted to help develop the new culture, the new standard of the new MTSU, and what it would look like. So I was like, of course, I was completely on board. I stayed, and I took the opportunity that he gave me and a lot of other guys to just take advantage of this new era he was trying to bring into.
Yeah, you're considered the CB1 going into the season. I know you had an injury early on in the Tennessee Tech game that had a little setback for you, but talk a little bit about you as far as your role this year. You talked about creating this new culture along with Coach Mason. I think you surprised a lot of people earning that CB1 spot, but you've shown, obviously, in your first game back, or I should say your second game back, you had an interception there against Kennesaw State, showing that you had really earned that CB1 position. Talk about, one, the offseason coming into this year, the preparation to become the number 1 cornerback option. And then, you get injured, you come back, you have to fight through all that rehab. I know in your press conference after that Kennesaw State game, you talked about the amount of due diligence you got to do to be healthy and come back and play. So talk about this road to being the number 1 cornerback, as well as the road to recovery.
It was going from last year playing nickel, being the nickel there with a lot of great DBs, from Trey to Jacoby to T. Ross. It was just really the standard that they built from before. Being able to be with guys like them that taught me, that really put it in motion just to be that guy. So going into the summer, obviously coming off of last season, it was just put the work in, and do what you've been doing, but not just keep doing it, keep going forward. So going into this season, it was really just keep busting my tail, keep doing what I've been doing, and then coming off the injury, it was just keep doing what you got to do. I was like I said in the press conference, from rehab at 5:00 in the morning every day, and 1:00 in the afternoon, and 3:00 in the afternoon again. It was just really just putting the time in and getting through it like with a purpose, though. Everybody can just get through it and go halfway, but it was just every day trying to make every day feel like I'm getting a step closer. Sometimes it didn't feel like that, but with the staff that we had, they made it really easier for me. They really kept it in perspective, like once it's time for you to get back out there, we need you rolling 100%. You know, so it's just they really gave me, I would say, the confidence. Like, okay, you know, once your clock get to where it's supposed to be, now it's time to roll. So let's go ahead and take this time that you got off. Let's heal, but also let's see how much we can push it each day in, each day out. So I mean, I really give it to them for sure.
Absolutely. And you talked a little bit about that staff and some of these new coaches you're working with this year, head DC, Brian Stewart, as well as your secondary coach, and Bryce Lewis. So tell me about working with these guys. Was it an easy transition for you with this whole new staff, as well as how you're getting along with some of these newer faces in the secondary?
I mean, honestly, it took me a while because I'm very relationship oriented. So once they first came, I was to be able to just watch and hear from these guys that are coached in the NFL, that are coached in higher situations and higher places. It took me a minute just to give them trust, to trust into them. You know what I'm saying? Just from I've been in college, it's my 4th year, and I done had a different coach each season. From whether that's when I was in Cincinnati, I done had a different corners coach, or I had a different D coordinator my 2nd year there, and then I came here, I'm just used to. It took a minute to develop the connection that I have with them now. Just like with Coach Bryce and Coach Stu, it just took me a while just to gravitate to them. That's all it was. But now I feel like they got the best interest of a lot of guys in the secondary room, a lot of guys in general. So
I want to get into the roster of some of these guys. Something that's always interesting with cornerbacks is their day-to-day when they practice with wide receivers. Are there any guys, I'm sure I could name a few myself that I could imagine who are tough, but when you go day-to-day to practice, who are the guys 1v1 on the wide receiver room that are so tough for you to guard, that actually you probably like to challenge yourself with in practice?
Really, the whole receiver room is very different, and they all really get to it. From Amari to Miles to Josh to Mitch, it's a lot of. Then you got the speedsters with Cam and Kellen. It's just learning, working your tools with each. You got to know each receiver. It's really like a game plan. Like you would go from week to week. 1 week you might get a speed guy that run a 4.3. And the next time you might get a 6'4" receiver that's a big, stocky, really strong receiver, and you gotta play use your different tools, playing with different guys. So I mean, they definitely get us better day in and day out. Just being with different guys that's different, that's got different natures of how they work. Like I said, from Amari, which is a all around, to Miles, to Josh, which is a young dude that really get to it, to Mitch, a lot of guys that don't get a lot of credit, but the receiver room works for sure, all of them.
Tell me about the DB room. I know you're the senior, the leader in that group. Are there any guys that, maybe not, we don't see the playing time this year, but you've seen this year their development, especially with you being out getting some reps? Any guys that you look forward to seeing them develop that you see a lot of promise in?
A lot of Jackson Lowe, which is a freshman. He was here in the spring. Jackson Lowe got it's going to be really, really nice. I can't wait to see him grow and develop. Tyrell, even though Tyrell is a junior, Tyrell is going to be crazy. He's going to be crazy once he, hit his full ceiling, which he's probably there now. Just the whole secondary room is amazing. Like, when we all sit back and just like listen to each other and we talk about stuff and we work and we watch the tape. We had a lot of talent. We have a lot of talent, and it's a blessing just to see like what we done bring into from the spring to the summer to now. Just seeing how everybody work, and we done put the work in together.
Absolutely. We look forward to seeing that secondary work as well as the defense later on in the rest of this season as you guys, again, aiming for that bowl bid opportunity still. But before we finish the call here, De'Arre, I want to talk to you a little bit more personal side of things. You got 2 younger brothers that play basketball in Blackman. I know you're an Oakland kid, but they're at Blackman. Something about them when I'm looking at it, because, again, I do a little work in the high school basketball side of things. You got CJ 6'1", you got Jalen at 6'6". I mean, are you still one-on-one with these kids? Are they 2v1? I mean, how are you handling this as a big brother?
We we still to this day still go 1-on-1. Whenever they feel like they get too high, they feel like they're just they're better than me. We still got to go 1-on-1. It's never too late. I don't care how old I am. We still got to. Okay, you feel like you're better than me? Come on, lace them up. I mean, I'm willing to. So probably about the end of this season, by the end of the start before they season get the rolling, I'm probably gonna get them again just to see where they at. That's all I do it for.
Right. You got to be the big brother still. Show them who's boss. And I know you got the hamstring injury. Can you still throw it down on 10 feet?
Of course. That's nothing. That's nothing.
Nothing. Now I'm gonna bring it back to the football team. 1v1. I know again you have the talent there at the basketball level. Is there anyone else on the team that you know that's got the basketball skills along with you?
That got the. I don't know. We ain't really been to the rec and we ain't really hooped. I haven't hooped with this group yet to really tell, but I'm still number one for sure.
Okay, I got you. There you hear it. De'Arre, number one basketball player, as well as the cornerback number one for the Blue Raiders this year. Super exciting. Great stuff from you. We look forward to your season as well as the Blue Raiders the rest of the way, and I appreciate you stopping by to talk with us today.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you having me.
The BRP is proudly partnered with Rivals Network affiliate GoMiddle.com. Subscribe for premium content for all the inside scoop on MTSU athletics, recruiting, or join our free forums to discuss today's episode and all things Blue Raiders. The BRP is also partnered with the College Huddle, a nationwide collaborative effort with over 80 Division I programs represented. Check out the website at thecollegehuddle.com to catch up on all college football content with daily articles and episodes provided by the largest college podcast community on the internet.
As always, we like to go behind enemy lines for our last segment of today's episode, and we will preview this upcoming football game here at Floyd Stadium. We will be hosting the Liberty Flames, the reigning Conference USA champions in football. But this year, things look a little bit differently for the Flames. But joining us now is Ben Reynolds. He is co-host of the Fan the Flames football podcast. Ben, how's it going?
Good. How you been, man? I'm excited to get down to Murfreesboro and watching Flames football. I'll let you be there. So it's going to be a fun little weekend in Nashville. Shout out to Zach Green. He's coming along with my travels. You also get to meet Jeremiah Flincham. So he'll be there and a couple other guys. So man, we're excited. We'll see how it goes. Who knows if we'll win this one.
Well, it's interesting going into this matchup because the Raiders have won 2 of their last 3. The Flames have lost 2 in a row. I don't think either one of us thought, we would be in this predicament where things are trending upwards for MTSU and things are trending down for Liberty. But as we've seen in weeks past, playing MTSU is kind of an opportunity for teams to kind of turn some things around. So what are the people feeling there in Lynchburg going into this matchup?
It's funny because I couldn't tell you. Because I haven't been on X. I got off weeks ago and I haven't got really too much back on. I'll get on it here and there, but I haven't been a part of the conversations too much. We'll get into that a little bit more shortly. It's I'm sure there's some chaos, but I mean it's year 2. I said that we would lose a couple games, but no one wanted to believe me. Was it these 2 games? No. But doesn't mean that we still can't lose more too. So, but I feel still positive about this team.
They've faced so much adversity even prior to the losing streak. You play one game like in a month, it feels, because the Appalachian State game gets nixed due to the hurricane. And you have for whatever reason, scheduling was 2-week buys there. So you had one game over a month period. Outside of that, is there anything else you can kind of identify as to what may have caused this losing streak?
There's a huge factor, and it's injuries. We've been not healthy at all the entire season. Our wide receiver room is decimated. We have 2 receivers who one was at the beginning of the year out for the whole year, and then the second one just recently got hurt. It was right before the App State game. So he had a few games in his pocket. So, it hurts a lot. We've had some defensive injuries too. Our starting defensive tackle, who's probably our best run stuffer, has been out. And we could have definitely used him in this past game. He hasn't been playing since the first game. So there's a lot of injuries. You mentioned the whole drag of not playing very many games. They're very rusty. But there's some other factors too that we'll get to in a second.
So one thing I did have noted, and you might have already answered that, is the topic of Caden Salter. He's the reigning Offensive Player of the Year last year for Conference USA. He's not having the same season that he had last year. The passing yardage aren't necessarily the concern, but it's really the touchdowns. Last year it's 32 passing touchdowns to 6 interceptions. This year it's just 11 and 3. The rushing numbers aren't there either. He's only at 346 yards when he rushed for over 1,000 last year. Injuries, I think, is probably what you could attest that to. But anything else like you could see? Like, is there something different about Caden Salter this year that we're not used to?
This is a fun one. So this is where I'm going to get in a little bit more into the deeper details. Not too much because I don't want to reveal everything. Because I don't want to be that like that big of a critic, but at the same time, I kind of have to be at this point. So before last year, he was highly touted, came from Tennessee, all that good stuff. And he really had a similar year kind of like this, even though he was hurt a lot more. But a lot of his games went like this. He was a little bit more turnover prone, but he also had the problems of being indecisive, not going through his reads. One of the things that I noticed against Jack State was he was locking on to receivers and not coming off of a read. It's very frustrating. He's got lazy footwork, lazy just overall, just his whole demeanor. And listen, I said this at the Conference USA podcast roundtable. I still think he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. He's had a bad year, and you can point at the injuries, you can point at this, you can point at that. There's a lot of it that's on him. There's a lot of it. And part of it, you could say, oh, well, CJ Daniels left. Well, CJ Daniels isn't even healthy for LSU, so that doesn't matter. He could be the same way here. His problem is a lot of himself, of not being able to throw receivers open. He had a lot of these problems last year that were masked by a very heavy run game. Like, he didn't even have to throw, I think, more than 6 passes in the last game of the year against UTEP because we just ran the ball over them, and he had a lot of running. He's just not making the right decisions. Like, there was, I think it was against Jack State. Yeah, it was against Jack State. He had a wide open Bentley hand shot and hesitated. Like, he was sitting in zone coverage, hesitated, and then got to him late. And then actually, funny enough, caused a roughing of the passer because he hesitated. There was no pump fake. And he's just, I'll get more into it in my own episode of, it's very frustrating. And I tried to hint at this early on in this year throughout, is that, he's not as good as we think he is. He's a very good quarterback who had a great year last year, but it just was, we got kind of lucky last year. We had a lot of healthy players. We had a great line. This year, people want to point at the line and stuff and say, he's still getting time back there. Like, that's the crazy thing. Yeah, it doesn't matter who you are. You could be Middle Tennessee. You could be UTEP, Jack State. There's going to be plays where people get after the quarterback. But there was this one play, for example, where he didn't even identify that there was a mismatch on the offensive line against Jack State. He had 6 guys rushing him against 5, and everybody's like, oh, the line. I'm like, yeah, a lineman's going to pass block 2 guys. It's crazy, man. It's weird because, like, people are finally opening up to their eyes to, like, oh, because I think that's such a problem in football as a whole is there's times where we're pointing our finger at the quarterback, but someone like Salter, who's proven only 1 year that he's very good, then when things go around him, they're like, oh, it's this. It's like, no, it's him too. So, and here's the thing. I'm not really on the train of, oh, we got to start playing Berger. I think Berger's very promising, the backup quarterback, but I'm not under that yet. I'm not going to be on that train yet because I think we stick through with him, let him try to work through this, let him try to get better. And if at the end of the year he's not any better, man, it's going to be a wide open competition, I think, next year. And that's saying something coming into this year if he stays.
Another factor there why you've had a lot of your issues is the wide receiver room, as you already touched on. Treyon Sibley is a guy who's been out for some time. You've got Elijah Canyon's kind of been your leading receiver, but even his numbers haven't been necessarily impressive over the last couple of weeks. it also you talk about Salter needing to step up, but you need some of these other guys now. The playing time is there for them. It's theirs for the taking. So who are some of these names that we should expect to see on Saturday that are going to make up some of these injured spots?
Yeah, I love Sibley. Don't get me wrong, I really do. I don't think he's our best talented. Like, I don't think he's our most talented receiver. His stats may suck, but like he's someone who has struggled even before he got injured too. In some games, he had a couple of really good games to start the season, but I think that was more of just Salter being comfortable with him. Well, one of our best receivers we finally returned, and that's Julian Gray. And people are like, "Oh, who the heck is this guy?" It's like because he's been out all year. You know what I mean? People are not familiar with these names. So Julian Gray is someone who is very talented and can really step into that role. Tyson Mobley, he's been hurt. Elijah Canyon, he was open a lot more often than people gave him credit. Like last on Wednesday, he was having a hand fighting moment with Jack State, and if you look at it, the defender was stacked on top of him. If Salter throws that as a back shoulder, he's wide open, and he threw it as if he was. You know what I mean? It's just little things like that. You know what I mean? That are just continue. I'm going to continue to criticize decisions made by Salter because he's got to help his receivers out, some of these young guys, and some of these new things. Instead of like there's times where they're misreading things, but Canyon is one. Mobley's hurt. Reese Smith should be back next week. He was suited up this past week, but the problem was they kind of were like, maybe we can just run him. And hey, we still made it a really good game, and we still could have won that game even without some players. If it wasn't for the little mistakes on offense that we saw and our offense not getting going, because Jack State, you kind of have to outscore. I don't care who you are.
Mm-hmm.
We held them to 31 points, and for the longest time, it was 24 until that awful pick at the end. So Bentley Hanshaw is another guy that he needs to look to more. Jacob Jenkins as well. Jacob Jenkins is former all Sun Belt. He didn't play last year because he was hurt. Well, not because he was hurt, because he didn't get the eligible waiver, which was so stupid. For the transfer portal, you let guys like JT Daniels, but anyways, that was our whole thing. And now he finally got his first touchdown as a Flame on Wednesday, so he's another guy that needs to step into that role. But also, we got two other guys, Kylan Austin and Markel Fortenberry, who have been Flames since they were they came in as high schoolers, and they're two guys who are getting to that point now. One's a redshirt sophomore and one's a redshirt junior that they have to step up. Salter, one of his best throws of the day was to Austin in the back of the end zone, but because Austin got hit a little bit in the back, he dropped it when he was on the ground. All he had to do was secure it. So there's a lot of like talent and potential that are behind these guys that are going to have to step up. You can't, and to be honest, I guess it may not even matter if there's no balls thrown to him. So yeah, it's going to be interesting for the rest of the season because I don't know how long Sibley's going to be out. I don't know how long Mobley and some of these other guys are going to be out.
Yeah, another name I know because he's kind of a mainstay there in the backfield for Conference USA is Quentin Cooley, running back for you guys. He's always been the steady Eddie that you needed him to be. The running game has always been there behind him. And then you touched a little bit about the defense too. One thing that did impress me, albeit the loss to Jacksonville State scored over 40 plus, and they're amidst their winning streak. And as you said, kind of the last one was kind of a fluke. So really 24 points there held on by your defense. So that's kind of a unit that I know you certainly feel strong about. What is it going to take for this Saturday for Liberty to kind of right the ship and get back in the win column?
It's going to have to be offense. Offense needs to improve. Like even towards the end, Salter had a wide open Kylan Austin streaking down the sideline and didn't even see him. Like, I'm not saying we score the touchdown. We still have to get 3 extra points with that too. You know what I mean? But it's got to be starting with that. Our defense just needs to keep on playing everybody's pointing at the defense because we gave up 295 yards or whatever to Trey Stewart alone. Trey Stewart's probably the best running back in Conference USA. He's better than Cooley. I don't care what anybody says. He wasn't in the league last year because he was playing D2 ball at Limestone. But they got to prevent some guys from this Middle Tennessee team to get into a rhythm. Like, Kelly's a big one, obviously. And who's going to cover him? Who's going to step up? Because I already know that even though I'm sure you guys have had a down year in you guys' mind going through all the adjustments and stuff, Badiato is still an experienced quarterback who can make plays. And we don't want to keep on seeing us fumble and stumble and rumble through these teams where we could, put some good points on them. But of course, I'm not going to disregard Middle Tennessee. They should put some points on our defense too. It's just, hey, can we outscore them? Can we put on a performance that isn't relying on our defense? Because that's the thing. Like, our defense has performed a lot better than what people are giving them credit, but they just look at the stats and say, oh, well, we got ran all over. It's like, yeah, they've been running over everybody too. So I know Middle Tennessee is not as prolific on offense as Jack State, but that doesn't mean that there couldn't be, especially if we just look at Kennesaw, who I think is obviously worse than Middle Tennessee. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. We really need to prevent the big plays and really need to start getting the big plays too on offense, because we haven't all year.
A lot to look forward to this Saturday there at Floyd Stadium here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Ben, and it sounds like the whole FTF family's making the trip down for the game. But Ben, I appreciate you stopping by the podcast today to tell us a little bit about the Flames, and we look forward to seeing you this Saturday.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. Appreciate you having me on, and go Flames.
Thanks for sticking around to the Raider wrap-up portion of the episode, where we will review the last week in Blue Raider athletics, as well as a look ahead to the schedule for this week and all things MTSU athletics. And we will kick things off with where we ended last week. Men's golf traveling to the Houston Christian Husky Intercollegiate down in Texas this last week. They moved all the way up into third place as a team out of 12 competing at 16 strokes over as a team. JJ Zimmer fell out of first place, unfortunately, but did finish in top 5 with a 1-stroke under par tournament. Competing as an individual, Oliver Baker finished tied for 10th at 3 strokes over. Sheldon McKnight tied for 13th at 4 over. Tied for 20th, Thad Whitfield at 5 over. Tied for 41st was Carter Maneth at 12 over. And then rounding out the 5-man roster card was Charlie Bell tied for 54th at 17 over. Lady Raiders wrapped up their exhibitions on Wednesday of last week by defeating Lindsey Wilson by a score of 71-32. And then last night, they actually took down the Lady Norse of Northern Kentucky up in Highland Heights, Kentucky, to kick off the regular season with a 79-58 win. Pretty convincing fashion there. I think their lead got as high as 25 points, and then it dwindled there late, but were able to get it back out to 21. A big shout out to Tamia Scott, not only for that last exhibition game for scoring over 20 points, but also for her 24-point performance against Northern Kentucky. Just seemed real easy for all night, able to get to the rim and finish. She goes for 24 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 steals. And really, collectively as a team, a very good way to start your season. We know we've had some of these non-conference early season games where you should be winning and you may be looking past them, and they looked poised from the start, jumped out to a really early 20-point lead in the second quarter, and then never looked back. But don't look back now, because now they will have a rematch with Grand Canyon this Friday at 6:30 p.m. in the Murphy Center. Again, that is a rematch that they have had on their calendar for quite a while, given that this is a part of the CUSA WAC Challenge, but also because Grand Canyon was a 26-win team last year, and they defeated the Lady Raiders right before New Year's. So I think for a lot of reasons, the ladies have this game marked down as a game that they've got to get their vengeance back. And I think when it's all said and done, Grand Canyon will be a good win and a good net RPI win because of how good this Grand Canyon team is. And they bring back their WAC Player of the Year, preseason Player of the Year candidates. So be there in Murphy Center Friday night, 6:30 to cheer on the Lady Raiders. Volleyball dropped 2 matches to UTEP, a second-place UTEP team, 0-3 on Friday and then 1-3 on Saturday. UTEP very good this year, competing for that top spot before they got swept by Western Kentucky last weekend. But the season's not over yet. The ladies will go down to Kennesaw State this weekend on the 8th and 9th. That's a Friday, Saturday, where they will compete with the Lady Owls as they will continue to push for a spot into the tournament. Things still look good right now, but you got to kind of do a good job with Kennesaw State. And right now, the Lady Raiders and the Owls are kind of even keeled there in the middle of the pack. So again, getting one, if not two, would be great for sealing up the deal to get to that volleyball conference tournament. But my player of the week goes to Lau Jansen, who gets 23 kills and 19 digs in her 2 matches there in El Paso. Men's tennis kind of had a different weekend, if you will, at the Lipscomb Invite. Only had Igor Mandu Beranger and Christian Thomas, the only 2 that traveled to the Lipscomb Invite this last weekend, where they competed against Lipscomb, Tennessee State, and Jacksonville State. So Beranger and Thomas were both the doubles, and they were also the only 2 singles for the Raiders. But I didn't want to leave them out of the conversation here, because they did pick up a doubles win in their first match on Friday night against Lipscomb. And then Beranger and Thomas did get singles wins against Lipscomb too, and then also Beranger got another singles win against Jacksonville State on the final day of the Lipscomb Invitational. But their fall schedule is not done quite yet. This weekend on Thursday, they will be competing at the ITA Conference Masters, so we'll be keeping eyes on them as their fall season continues with just 2 more tournaments left. And then after the Conference Masters, it'll be the individual national championships. And then, of course, their indoor season will be a quick turnaround coming in January. Lady Raider Soccer finished up their regular season with a 4-1 convincing win over the Louisiana Tech Lady Texters. Manon Labarge gets 2 more goals, inching her closer to that Conference USA lead. She's just 1 shy of the Conference USA lead at 13 goals. They will actually make the conference tournament that begins this Wednesday at 7 p.m. That'll be down in Miami, Florida, and they are the 5 seed, and they will be playing Sam Houston State, and the winner of that will move on to play the 1 seed FIU Golden Panthers. So looking to get a win in the column there, as they lost to Sam Houston State in the regular season by a 2-1 score, very narrow defeat, giving up a late goal in the final 10 minutes of the match to the Lady Cats on the road. So neutral field here, hoping the Lady Raiders can get in the win column and advance and see what they can do. But check back in at next week's Raider wrap-up portion to see where our ladies fare in that. Football, as we talked about at the top of the episode, with their 3rd win of the year in El Paso, score of 20-13 over the Miners. I give my player of the game to Miles Butler with 5 catches for 101 yards and a touchdown in a game where, as we spoke with Jake Rose at the very beginning, Omari Kelly's presence wasn't very well felt, and Miles Butler just certainly stepped up for Nick Vadiato when he needed to, made some big catches, definitely had a big touchdown run there late in the second half to help pull the Raiders back within the match there at 13-all. So big shout out to him as well as the Raiders to keep their bowl season alive, in all hopes that they can keep things going this Saturday when it's the Salute to Veterans game here at Floyd Stadium against the Liberty Flames. Again, a highly touted Liberty Flames team, but as we just prefaced in the Behind Enemy Lines there with Ben Reynolds, they are very beatable. So hopefully you play yourself a clean match and keep your bowl season hopes alive with 2 winnable games down the stretch with New Mexico State and FIU. So again, be there. Obviously, big reason to be there already for the Salute to Veterans game, to thank all of our servicemen. But of course, pulling for the Blue Raiders on a Saturday at noon kickoff. A beautiful day it should be, again, to keep these Raiders in contention for a bowl game. Cross country competed at the Conference USA Championships this last week. The curse of even number years continues for the program as they finish in 2nd place in both men and women's. However, you have a pair of freshmen that did finish 1st overall. That is Alan Kiplagat got 1st overall as an individual champion for Conference USA, and then Odelia Jepchumba placed 1st in the women's 6K. So big congratulations to Kiplagat and Jepchumba. Also top 10 finishers, Brian Kiptu at 4th for the men, and then Jacinto Gaspar finished in 10th place in the men's 8K as well. And then Sandra Mayau finished 7th for the ladies, and then Eleanor Tao just barely missing out on that top 10, finishing in 11th place. So a lot of talent on the roster that's still going to return for next year and hopefully get back on the odd year numbered championships. But their season's not quite over yet. In 2 weeks, they will be going to the South Regional that's hosted in Tallahassee, Florida, as they look to advance to the cross-country national championships as individuals. So stay tuned for that in 2 weeks. And then the last team to compete would be the men's basketball team. That was yesterday at 11 a.m. They defeated Oglethorpe, the Stormy Petrels of Oglethorpe, 97-51. a lot of takeaways from that game. Really, I thought the approach was very balanced. They beat a Division III team, the way that you're supposed to beat a Division III team. Put it on them early, kept it there the whole way. I'm really impressed with Issam Mustafa. He is our player of the game with 14 points, 10 rebounds, 13 steals. Torrey Alston got himself a double-double off the bench. Really impressed with him and his ability to move around the floor. Cam Weston looked like he's in good form, still taking back a few minutes. I thought Jalen Counter looked great at the point guard position as I kind of thought that he would, but he looked very comfortable there and kept the pace up. That's one thing I thought Counter did, provided that maybe Cam doesn't have quite yet anyways, is keeping that pace up. The defense looked good, and like I said, they defeated an inferior opponent the way that they're supposed to with a 46-point home win. So look forward to the real test for them, which is this Saturday at 6 p.m., where they will be at Abilene Christian. A game, again, that on paper you are probably the better team, but we all know the road woes for the Raiders in years past with head coach Nick McDevitt. So this would be an opportunity to kind of go ahead and write that off as just years past, and that this team is made for winning ball games. So look, all eyes there for that road contest this Saturday at 6 p.m. And that'll do it for the Raider wrap-up portion of the episode. A lot going on right now as we transition from the fall sports into the winter sports now that basketball has started yesterday. That means this next week's episode, we're going to have Jonathan House of Sideline Sports Network, the Blue Raiders, and then we've also got your favorite Sam Doughton returning to us to talk about that fall transition that I just talked about, giving you the lowdown on everything that is MTSU athletics from the inside. So it'll be great to have those two inside sources meeting with us next week. We won't have any player interviews for you as we go through this transitional phase. But as always, I appreciate everyone tuning into our episode today. And if you enjoy this video, please take the time to like it. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Of course, follow us on all of our social medias. That's at Facebook, that's at TikTok, X, Twitter, Instagram. Like all of our posts. We really do appreciate it. Follow us so you don't miss the next episode. And of course, we always tease our next guests on there as well. So without further ado, I appreciate everyone again tuning in this long. And until next time, go Blue.